Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome into another edition of Infection Podcast. My name is Nick Craig. You can follow me on X at Nicholas M. Craig, or of course, check out our website, infectionpodcast.com. It would be a national tragedy to do this show alone. So joining me as he does, Brian with an I Aldridge. Hello, Mr. Brian.
Hello, and if you want to find me, of course, on X, you can get me at Boise Computer and at Brian Aldridge on all the rest of them, if I have an account there. Of course, you can go check out our blog for getting a hold of us. So, Nick, this week, there was something that we've been waiting for.
It's done.
Finally happened.
It's done.
Yeah, it's now considered official. Microsoft, Activision, Blizzard, the whole behemoth that is now a merged company. Now, there's going to be things happening. So here's their video. This is like their video for, I don't know, do you want to play audio on it? I don't know if there's music.
Let's see. Yeah, it's music. So this is their little merge trail. So obviously this is, Halo, and I don't know what game this is.
Oh, which one is that? That's one of the Call of Duties.
Forza. That wasn't
Forza?
Call of Duty. Yeah, Forza.
Yeah, that was one of their Call of Duty characters, wasn't it?
Oh. Sea of Thieves, a couple of other games there.
Yeah, I saw World of Warcraft there.
Get Bethesda in there. But those are all Bethesda properties, so those have already existed. But Warcraft would, of course, be new, right?
Well, that's under Blizzard.
Crash Bandicoot? Forgot that that's an Activision product. That was always a PlayStation exclusive.
Overwatch.
Oh, Candy Crush. How would I ever...
Hey, they held on to their mobile.
Yes, they did.
It's about time.
StarCraft. Oh, man, I tell you what, if they bring back the old Crash Bandicoot games, man, I'll be all in over that. That would be phenomenal.
I'll follow you from here on out.
Well, and that's something that they've said, and we'll cover that a little bit.
Forgot about
They've
Spyro.
actually talked about that being, what about these old products? Because there's a lot of products. I have a list of games that people haven't heard of for a long time that are now owned by Microsoft that hopefully will get a remaster, hopefully will get new content. So that's their official trailer.
It's a good day to play. It's a good day to be Phil Spencer. It's a good day to be what's his name? Who's the Activision CEO? Oh, God, his name is totally escaping me right now. Bobby Kotick. Yeah, great day to be all of these guys. You have a list? What? I'd be curious for you to run through some of those list items.
Okay, so let's look at some of these names because these are ones that I was like, oh, they own that. Okay, so first of all, Activision Blizzard. Here's ones that maybe aren't so great. 3D Ultra Pinball. I'm
ecstatic.
Yeah, on the edge of their seats. But Call of Duty, Call to Power, Crash Bandicoot, which you had mentioned, really good. One that hasn't had new content for a little while. Dark Reign, of course, Diablo is a big one coming in. Extreme Paint Brawl, Front Page Sports Baseball, Gabriel Knight, Geometry Wars, Guitar Hero, which hasn't had anything for a while.
Since when did I don't ever remember Geometry Wars being an Activision game. I thought that was just some indie title that came out on the Xbox 360. I had
they got him somehow.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
So then Guitar Hero, I'm thinking maybe we'll start to see some content out of that because that was really popular. They kind of went off the rails with the content and how they were doing it.
Yeah, that was actually made by a studio that Activision bought. I toured their studio once when I lived in Albany, and the name Vicarious Visions was the name of the studio that was was one of the main Guitar Hero studios. So I'll be curious.
I think they tried doing this weird like online and doing weird things with subscriptions to songs and got away from the core of the game. And I think people would still have fun. I think there's a space for it for sure. And probably in mobile too. They could do mobile with some of that game. Then you got Gun, Hearthstone, which has been around and fairly popular. I think it's kind of dwindled in the last couple of years. Heavy Gear. Heretic is an old one. That's like an old 90s title. I don't know if they put out too much since then, but Heretic is an old one. Heroes of the Storm. Hexen is another old one. Interstate 76. King's Quest is one. Now, I don't know if King's Quest was really huge for you, But me growing up, in the 90s, King's Quest started out as a really basic text adventure type of game. Well, not really text adventure, but very rough point and click adventure. Had some newer versions. I've got them all on my arcade machine to play. Yeah, that's the original. That's the original King's Quest. I mean,
16
I remember playing that game, and it was pretty hard at the time, but I was pretty young.
Yeah.
Laura Bow Mystery Series. I don't know. Lost Vikings, Matt Hoffman's Pro BMX, Overwatch, Phantasmagoria, Pitfall. I mean, who knows? We'll see some new hot Pitfall action happening.
Yeah.
Police Quest is one that I used to love. Now, the old Police
that.
Quest, and you got to think it's an old kind of an adventure game like that where you were a detective and you were solving crimes.
It looks exactly the same as King's Quest. I mean, it's the same.
It's King's Quest, but it's a police. Do you have a picture of it?
A police. The exact same thing. The same
hey,
UI.
That's way better graphics. Hey, I know the stages of graphics.
Okay. That's
is way better than the King's
this
Quest.
Might be 32 color, maybe. It's not 64. 32
close
color.
64 colors.
Yeah,
We're
maybe.
moving on up.
Okay. Same white UI at the top with the score, though. Literally.
That's how they.
I mean, it's literally exactly the same thing.
Then we got Prototype, Quest for Glory. Now, SWAT was another game. That was a little bit newer versions of the Police Quest.
Yeah, I've heard of SWAT.
The old SWAT games. Singularity, which kind of was more of a flash and pan type of thing. It didn't. I mean, it was popular for a little bit, but then it didn't really get a lot of play afterwards. Skylanders. Soldier of Fortune is one I had the box up until recently for that. Like that's an old shooter game. Space Quest. Now that's right along with Police Quest and King's Quest.
Hold on.
Space Quest is another one of those that was right around that time frame. An old game I used to play. Come on, Nick, you'll love these graphics.
It's the exact same. Dude, the interfaces are exactly the same. Score. It's the exact same thing.
I know. Well, they wanted to have a uniform interface, and they didn't want to rewrite the code.
Yeah, corporate wants you to point out the difference between these two games. Are you capable?
This
of
is an
doing
upgraded game. The background scenes are different. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. This is old. This looks old. This is like 16 color.
Yeah, so this is 16-bit. Or 16 colors.
Yeah.
So that's Space Quest. Spyro, really popular one that I think they could definitely keep going with. StarCraft. That's been a while since they've come out with anything StarCraft, but they still do tournaments. There's a huge competitive scene.
StarCraft 2 is still pretty popular, and that game came out in like 2009, I think, or something like that.
Tenchu says only the games released before Activision Blizzard sold the rights to From Software.
Older versions
in 2004. So yeah, it's older stuff. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. Haven't seen anything out for that in a long time. Used to play that on the Dreamcast.
It's a great game.
It was. True Crime, Ultimate Soccer Manager, Warcraft, which would be nice to see some real content from Warcraft coming out again. Of course, World of Warcraft. Now, here's one, Zork. One of my favorite games ever when I was 15 was Return to Zork. It was one of those ones where they recorded video. It was like a cut scenes. So the original Zork was a text adventure. You are standing in front of a mailbox. There's a White House. Like that's the opening scene of that one. Sad that I still remember it. But that is Zork. And then Return to Zork was one that I played a lot of. Very difficult game. I don't know. I was 15, so maybe it wasn't that difficult. But
high quality graphics.
Yeah, that's Zork. Yeah. So that's like the end of Zork probably. But that is.
Sorry to spoil it.
Yeah, and you're telling me you've reached the final test. I never made it that far in the original Zork.
Yeah, well, it's only been 40 years.
You ruined it for me.
It's 41 years. It's 42 years. I apologize.
Yeah,
well,
so Zork would be a good one to have something cool because there's a nice story and there are like 4 of them out there. So that's just the Activision Blizzard part. Then there's King, which is a bunch of mobile games.
Mobile games.
They have there. Now Bethesda was there before, but Commander Keen. I want to mention one thing. Commander Keen, Wolfenstein. Quake, Doom, these are all ones from Bethesda. It'd be nice if they're focusing on these old ones, come out with a new Commander Keen, because Commander Keen was hot in the 90s.
So I don't want to burst your bubble. I can tell you're very excited. And yes, Commander Keen is a great game. They've owned Bethesda / ZeniMax for 5 years now, maybe longer than that. It's been a while. and we haven't seen them really touch some of these older IPs. Now we've had some new Dooms and things like that, but I don't know that that's going to be their priority.
Well, okay, here, listen to this. Here is a quote from Phil Spencer. Xbox boss Phil Spencer is open to breaking the seal on some forgotten games. If team wants to go back and revisit some games, he says, I'm going to be all in. Make it on some. Don't just do it for Activision Blizzard. Do some of the Bethesda, because there's some awesome old IPs they haven't touched yet in the Bethesda as well. Just if you look at, pull up Commander Keen really quick, because you'll see, you got to think of the graphics that was that time. Everybody knows Doom, Quake, Starfield, even Wolfenstein. They've got some newer Wolfensteins that they've come out with, but Commander Keen was kind of a kid's type of game, side scroller, but for the time, pretty good graphics. Definitely. And it had a funny story. It was kind of a comedy. That would be one that they could totally modernize, and it would bring back all these guys my age. They're like, dude, I remember playing this when I was a kid. And they'd be all in and have their kids try it. And it'd be something that, not necessarily a remaster. If you can come up with a better method, this was kind of the technology at the time, the side scroller, but come up with a fun way to play this game and use the IP and continue the story, because it was really popular at the time. They had like 6 different Commander Keens they came out with back then. I think it would be fun. That's revisit my glory days.
I'm not, and believe me, I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer here. I'm not sure that I hear your quote. Can you read Phil Spencer's quote again?
All right. Phil Spencer said that he is open to breaking the seal on some forgotten games. He says if the team wants to go back and revisit some, and it's insinuating games, he says, I'm going to be all in.
I'll believe it when I see it. That they've owned some of. Now, obviously, you're talking about the Activision. Now, these older point and clicks and 2D scrollers, that's a different era. But the games out of that really came to mind that I could see some serious stuff happening with would be games like Spyro. Those are big. These are huge PlayStation 2 games. Crash Bandicoot was one of the legendary PS2 games, like all.
But I don't consider those ones forgotten, though. I mean, those are fairly. I think he's hinting at the ones.
Oh,
something happened with my.
Oh, I don't know what happened there. I don't know. I don't know what. They're not new though, Brian. I mean, you're talking about the Crash Bandicoot games. You're talking about early 2000s when these games came. Yeah, 20-year-old games at this point, right? So you've got a whole generation. Some of these games you can still get and play on more current hardware. I'm thinking the ones that people haven't seen. The kids, like my kids, have never heard, other than me making them sit at the arcade machine and say, sit down and play this for an hour, or else you don't get to touch the arcade ever again. This is the kind of thing to get them to play and see some of these games. Yeah, you're gonna play this game whether you like it or not. The last so there have been recent Crash Bandicoot games, so I guess I'm just out of the loop because there's one that.
That's what I mean. There's
in 2020.
Some more recent of those.
Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time. I just feel like bringing back the original Crash Bandicoots and the racing one was awesome. I don't remember what it was called, but like Crash Bandicoot Racing, that was sick. They've got a lot of opportunity. They own.
My wife and our kids play. They on the arcade. They play Spyro. They play Crash Bandicoot. They enjoy those, but those are still fairly modern on some of them, because some of them have come out with new content, other than their original. Some of these haven't been seen for, I don't know why they keep closing, sorry about that. Hasn't been seen for like 40 years. I mean, this could have been 30 years. A lot of these are fairly old. So I don't know. If they're saying some of the forgotten ones, like Hexen has been a running joke as far as coming out with a new one of those for a long time. I think for the meme factor, they may be willing to come out with the Hexen before anything else. Hexen is one that was kind of a dark game. I didn't play it just because it had a lot of satanic symbolism and things like that when I was a kid, so it wasn't something I played. But I mean, so did Doom and Quake and all of these other ones. But this one was pretty blatant on the cover.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot. It'd be interesting to see with them getting this closed the money being done and what they actually pick out of this list, and see if they come forward with some things that could be very popular. Because I think a lot of the problem is we're kind of relying on a lot of IPs that are repetitive on something. Call of Duty, every year, every 2 years they come out with something new. I think having some where even Diablo, they take a couple of years between releases, but I think having some of these that haven't had one for a long time and just see if people get pulled in by the story, put modern graphics on it, have some people that are thinking, nostalgia, but find some of these old IPs and see if there's an interest in them. See if you can come up with a good story or gameplay, whatever it is, and pull them out of the closet. So
it's done.
There's a lot of IPs. I also want to see World of Warcraft. I want to see what they do with that in the Game Pass, because I've been saying that since the announcement of this. Like, what are you going to do with World of Warcraft when it comes to the Game Pass? Are you going to bundle it in somehow? Because the $15 a month current World of Warcraft fee makes 0 sense in the market.
It's a very antiquated model. That the world is their oyster, as they say, Brian, and they've got the IPs. Excuse me, they've got the IPs to do it if they want it. What it's going to come. Excuse me, hiccups. What it's going to come down to is manpower and resources. And I will note the backdrop again. I just sound like I'm being real negative here. That's not my intention. But the backdrop of all of this is a shrinking video game industry right now because of the status of the economy. So
they may want to wait. I think.
They're going to have.
What about taking some of these old IPs and making them mobile? Just coming up with a way to make the interface.
They did that with the new Diablo. Isn't that the new Diablo that's mobile?
Yeah, but I'm thinking like some of these really old games that have graphics that you wouldn't think of as stellar on a console, but you take them to a mobile device and you throw those graphics on there and they don't look that bad. It fix up the interface so that you can play it, and take some of these old IPs and just throw those games out there, and people will buy them and play them on their mobile or tablet.
The only problem you're going to have with that is for some of these older games, there's going to be no way to port them to mobile. They're going to have to completely rebuild them because they're so old. I mean, like the engines.
It'd be funny if they did an old DOS emulator on a phone.
Well, yeah, I mean that's what. Yeah, to play some of those point and clicks and things like that. Yeah, absolutely. But
it comes down to like if it's an old PlayStation 1 game, yeah, you're going to run into some issues. They do have emulators, but I don't think they're going to want to use an emulator on a Play Store.
I'm sure it's against Apple's terms of service anyway, so they probably can't do it even if they wanted to. So it's done. It's done. The deal's closed.
Well, now one funny thing, we've still got the U.S. antitrust enforcer says pressing on with fight against the Microsoft Activision Blizzard deal.
Great.
This was after the UK gave their permission, and then they said we're closing the deal. You've still got the FTC, good old con, sitting there saying that they're not going to approve. They're still going to fight it. They're going to go to the D.C. Court of Appeals, Appeals Court on December 6th. So, I mean, they're considering this done. But you still got the FTC going to the Court of Appeals on December 6th trying to fight this. I just think they said the FTC continues to believe this deal is a threat to competition. The FTC is a threat to competition. If you see, I mean, we've talked about the type of things they've been doing. They're the way that they've been doing business. They've been a threat to business in general, let alone competition. I don't know. It's just frustrating kind of seeing what our FTC has been doing and how they've been attacking business. And everyone else has passed this along, and she's still not willing to let this go.
No.
And we're wasting tax dollars fighting it, something that's already been done.
Well, yeah, Lena Khan has made that pretty clear.
Yeah. And so we've got the UK who approved it, the US saying they don't. One thing that they said in this is they're still, because we got all these different people trying to start unions. They said that they are reiterating that their labor neutrality agreement following the acquisition is still in place. This is something that they have said they're not anti-union. And Microsoft hasn't really been anti-union. I think they've kind of accepted them where they need to accept them. Now's not a great time, I don't think, but that's something they're keeping going, even though they've merged, because Activision Blizzard is the one that the unions seem to fight so much. They didn't seem to fight Microsoft. So we'll see where that goes. See how many unions try to form out of this. But yeah, that's kind of that deal. We'll see what games they start to list off, but who knows? If they start to bring some old titles, maybe they'll start kind of putting out some teasers on the internet and see what people really clamor for before they move forward. But
sure,
I haven't heard of anything official yet. All right. Do you have anything in particular you want us to aim for, or are we just going to jump off and jump into another thing?
No, I don't. Nothing in particular.
Okay, let's talk about something with Rocket League here really quick.
Sure.
Because this is something that Epic, of course, owns Rocket League now, and they've been trying to figure out some different things. One thing that they're changing in an upcoming version of Rocket League is they're no longer going to have skin trading. Now, for people who don't know what that means, that you can win skins and you can trade them in the market. So there were third-party markets that people had on the internet where you could go and trade these skins for money and things like that. One person, I thought this was kind of entertaining. The Rocket League trading site founder says he will never build a product based on the decision of another company again after one decision from Epic puts him out of a job. Well, welcome to reality. This is something I dealt with Hangout Canopy. We built a product on Google Plus, and when they said that they didn't want us doing it anymore, we were beholden to that being the thing, right? What could we do about it? They own the product. When you build something that's 100% piggybacking on someone else's product, you can't really complain if they change something that makes your site or your service invalid. And that's what they've done.
Yeah, and it sucks. I think the quote there, build a product based on the decision of another company. So under that logic, if we're going to play it out, because that's a very bold claim to make. I think you would agree to that.
Yeah.
If we play that out, then this game is not on Steam. This game's not on Xbox. This game's not on PlayStation. It needs to be a game that is only available on its own console. Right?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's
the
same thinking. They're beholden to whatever service they put their product on.
But that's what I'm saying. Is like, so you're gonna
Steam wants to pull their product.
That's my point.
Their product.
Oh, well, we built it on Unreal Engine and Epic, and those are just terrible guys and everything else. But what about the marketplaces that you're on? I mean, you can't. To me, it just seems like a really weird argument. That's all. I don't really understand
And he was making money on their service. You got to think, he's not hosting any of the real infrastructure of the skins, the trading. So he's making a percentage off of a market outside of the whole game, where if Epic really wanted to make money, they could have done a trading system in the game and made money off of it that way. I mean, if you really wanted to, he's making money off of everything. All he's doing is providing an interface for people to be able to do secure trades through, which, is a lot of work to do it well. And I'm sure there's a lot of fraud that possibly happens, but that's something that I think, I assume they would trade it to some neutral,
there's
account,
so
and then it gets handed off.
This has existed for a while. When I was in high school, I played a lot of TF2, and there was no in-game player trading there. So you would use websites like the TF2 Trading Post, where you would do this, and it would be exactly that. You trade it would get traded through some sort of intermediary, and then you would the trade would happen. So I'm sure. I mean,
Diablo did this. Did you remember on a couple Diablo ago when they first released one of their newer Diablos? They had to where you could buy from other players. They had kind of an auction house in game where for cash you could buy weapons and things from other players. That's how I paid for one of my World of Warcraft editions. I got $60, I think it was, for one item that I had won in the game, and someone paid $60 for me to sell them that item in game, and I did, because I didn't really care. I was playing the game just for fun, and it gave me the other game. So, that they turned it off because of Chinese hackers going and just infiltrating the market and making a mess out of everything. But that was something they did for a while, and I think it was fairly successful. Kind of made the game a pay-to-win game, which is a downside, in the end. But if anything, these companies, if that's what they want to do, they should do it internally and kind of get rid of these external markets. Don't allow trading if you don't want trading to happen. Because look at TF2. Was it TF2's got markets?
All outside of the game. That's my point. This is inside of the game where this is not.
This market's outside of the game. People are doing this all in an external website. That's what this guy's complaining about. He hosts it totally outside of Rocket League.
So Rocket League is shutting them down.
They're just turning off trading skins altogether, which is.
But that's because of something with Epic that's happening.
Epic's just turning it off. The feature of trading skins with other people off.
Epic owns Rocket League, don't they?
Epic owns Rocket League. Yes, that's what I'm saying.
I forgot that they owned Rocket League.
They bought them.
Blanked on that they owned Rocket League. Well, you know what? Then never mind. Can I get a redo of the last 10 minutes?
Yeah, I see where I'm going now.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. So yeah, they don't want their stuff traded on an outside marketplace, so they're shutting it off. Okay, big freaking deal. I mean, you built a third-party app on top. You built an app using their API on top of I think, is Rocket League free? I don't remember if it's free or not.
Yeah, it's free to play.
Free to play game. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is.
And that's the thing.
It sucks, but whatever.
It sucks for him, but it's just the way that this type of business works. And for them, maybe they're wanting to redo. I don't like it when there's a bunch of skin traders and things like that, because you get people constantly messaging you to try to trade things, and it kind of changes the whole attitude of the game, where it's not about competition, it's about them getting skins and trying to make money. And then there's plenty of other games that do that, but we'll see if they kind of back off of this. I don't think this is totally going to change how some people play the game, because there are people that play this game to make money. They play it to try to get skins and make money off of this. Maybe this will cut out some. I'm wondering if part of their reasoning is you got a lot of bots and things that are just trying to collect skins to sell them. Is this to combat those bots to where their whole business is pointless? Having a bot that's sitting there and kind of acting like it's moving just to get points or XP or whatever it is to unlock things, and having a bot run the game all day. Kind of kills, because in this game, when you have players that aren't helping you, but you can't quit without getting penalized, which is how this game works, it's frustrating. You have to sit there and then carry the game while you have bots running around.
I want to read this last part of this statement. This is from PC Gamer, which is normally a pretty good outlet. But I think the big picture here is that companies like Valve and Epic do not like it when people make products based off their products, just as long as it's on their terms, like Valve selling user-created cosmetics on the Steam Marketplace, and Epic sharing revenue with Fortnite Island creators under their Creator Economy 2.0 terms. Informal business relationships are out, formal ones are in, and I think that's good, and I like the context of that there, because your initial impression would be, well, these companies, if Kotaku was writing this article, it would read something like, greedy bastards strip away livelihood or something like that, right? That's what it would read. The reality is they have ways for revenue generation. Both of these companies offer revenue generation through things like either the Steam Marketplace or through the Creator Economy, which, by the way, Valve is paying out 60% to the creators, which is the best possible deal you're going to find. Nobody else is coming close to that. They're just changing this.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that's something for them, that maybe there's something they're going to release or do. They're wanting to curtail this right now, but we'll find out. This is a very popular product still. There's a lot of people that really enjoy this game. If this is going to hurt the game, I think they would reverse it. But I have a good assumption that they're probably going to be doing something that will enhance the game, or do something that people can't use to make money off of it, and maybe cut some of the other issues out. All right. Well, here's another one that I think is really going to affect. Sorry, we're getting some random ones here, but this is going to really affect one of our favorite game stores, GameStop. Best Buy is going to stop selling physical media next year.
Makes perfect
which
sense.
is a big part of what GameStop relies on for making money, is selling used games. We're getting closer and closer to having a diskless type of gaming atmosphere, to where I can see easily in 5 years them really not having disc games and selling consoles that have the ports anymore for that.
Well,
because maybe they'll sell something external, but what's the point on this when everything can be digital and almost everybody has fast internet?
let me clarify one thing. This is physical movies and TV shows. Video games are not part of this.
Oh, so that's kind of weird. Well, they're saying, okay, so movies and TV shows.
Yeah.
So that was an update they put out afterwards. Then,
yeah,
so they were saying initially this was going to be games.
Well, because I think Best Buy's original announcement was we're done selling physical media, which a video game would be considered, and then I think then there was an.
So they put out an update here recently. Okay, good. Well,
yeah.
that because when I originally put this in there, they weren't saying, they were saying that they were stopped selling physical media. Period. And I was like, wow, that's going to kill this.
I can understand
movies. I can understand.
Well, but here's the thing. I can understand physical video games too. First of all, Brian, let me ask you a series of questions as if this were a courtroom. Mr. Aldridge, when was the last time you visited a Best Buy?
When I bought my Xbox.
Mr. Aldridge, when was that?
This was 2 years ago. I mean, this is 3 years ago, maybe.
So between 24 and 36 months ago, you visited a Best Buy.
Yes.
Did you buy physical media when you were at your Best Buy? Did you buy a video game with your console?
I didn't even go in because this was the middle of COVID, and they wouldn't let me go into the store,
Mr. Aldridge, I'm speaking here. Mr. Aldridge, when was the last time you purchased a physical video game inside of a Best Buy?
I have never purchased a game inside of Best Buy.
Okay, so I've never purchased a game at a Best Buy either, which is crazy because they have a decent video game collection. But I was in Best Buy a couple months ago. I had some time to kill between a meeting and there's a coffee shop in the Best Buy Plaza. So I walked in there and I wanted to see what they had on the shelf for GPUs. This was like as we were coming out of the GPU shortage, I wanted to see what they physically had product-wise.
Hadn't stopped.
So I looked at that, and they actually had some decent stuff. I think I posted it in Discord. And then I ran over to the video game section, and it was like a barren wasteland. I mean, there were hardly any games on there. Unlike GameStop, the physical games are on the shelves. It's not just the leaflet with no game in it like they have at GameStop. When you're buying a cellophane wrapped game that sits on a little hanger shelf, there was nothing there for anything. For the Switch, well, I know the Switch doesn't sell physical games, but no cartridges for the Switch, not a whole lot for the Xbox or PlayStation. There just wasn't a whole hell of a lot in there. So while, yes, this is not affecting video games right now,
I can see it around the corner, right?
I mean, within a couple of years, it's not only is it becoming less and less prominent that you're buying, and again, Best Buy only sells new games. There is no used game marketplace. That's one of the things that Best Buy or GameStop has going for them is I could walk in there today and purchase an old used Xbox One game. But you can't do that at Best Buy. There's zero margin on new video games, Brian. I mean, companies like Best Buy and GameStop get the games for like $52 a game. So you're talking about a $7 to $8 margin on a game. That is nothing. I mean, that is abysmal.
I always wait for sales on digital anyways. Or if I can get any kind of a deal and I'm going to get a game, first of all, I don't want it on discs because when I've gotten games on discs, they get broken. They get scratched. Something happens and I end up not having the game anymore. I know if I get it digitally, and as long as my account never gets banned, I have access to it on my Xbox account. Yeah. And I think that that's kind of the natural way that everybody's leaning. And I can't imagine before long, if they keep having low sales, they offer these buy two, get one free and all these other things. If they don't make a lot of sales, or if the consoles quit putting the disc drives on the consoles themselves, which has been talked about quite a bit, then what would be the point of selling any physical media? Who goes and buys them for PC even anymore? Discs.
nobody even sells discs. I mean, for PC,
Yeah.
but try buying a sleeve of blank CDs, Brian. Even that is complicated now. I mean, you can't. I don't even think store. I'm not even sure Best Buy sells that stuff. You have to go to like Staples to buy that. I think if they even carry them anymore, who knows?
Yeah.
We are probably 3-4 years away from new consoles. 5 years, maybe somewhere in that ballpark.
Which by that time, I think it's going to be expected to be discless.
All digital. Yeah, I mean, there's just I don't see a situation where maybe like the deluxe edition of the console has a disc drive. For backwards compatibility is the only issue where this shows up. Is I've got a huge catalog of Xbox 360 games, physical media, of course, and one of the cool things with the Xbox One, I do not have a new generation, I have the last gen Xbox, is that I can pop in an old Call of Duty and play that. That's really cool. But here's the great solution for this, Brian. All these companies have to do, and I believe they're already doing them, USB 3 disk drives or USB-C disk drives for backwards compatibility. That's all they need.
In 5 years, is a game going to fit on a Blu-ray drive?
It will not.
That's the problem. They're going to have maybe the base install or something on there, but you're still going to have to download. There's not going to be anything you can play without an internet connection. So what's the point? And day one patches, every single one of these games that come out now have a 50 gigabyte day one patch.
Yeah.
So what's the point of the disc in the first place? And they require you to install a patch to even play the game.
Correct.
So it's like you've already downloaded the whole thing that was on the disc in the first place. And they can't even fit all of it on there. So you're just installing part of it from the disc if you are, and then they're downloading the rest off the internet.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of an interesting issue that they're that it's eventually gonna make those obsolete, because we haven't had a lot of advances in Blu-ray technology in quite a few years. If you really think about it, from CDs to DVDs to Blu-ray, there was a progression. But you know what the next progression is? It's digital. There's not, of anything I've heard of coming out, there's not another step other than USB, maybe USB 3 and future USB 4 disk drives that are no longer spinnable CDs. They're going to be working off of a Blu-ray.
I mean, a disc is
a USB type of a plug.
A disc is just a series of pits and what do they call them? Pits and valleys, I think is what they call when you're etching a disc. There's only so much you can physically fit. So,
and they haven't advanced that too much.
Well, there's no way to. I mean, there's only so
beyond it.
You can only make a laser so small. I mean, and make it so cost effective. So, I mean, there's no question about it. We can move on. I mean, the physical media is out. The games are too big. When they go gold, that's the term when a game is the final version of the game that's pressed onto all the, well, not pressed, but burned onto all the discs. Mm-hmm. That happens at a way earlier pace than the development cycle. So these games come out, and as Brian noted, have 50, 60, 70 gigabyte day one patches. Can't even play. You literally can't even play the game without an internet connection to start. It just doesn't make any sense anymore. Yes, there are people without broadband internet. For those people, Brian, the sad reality is you're going to have to stick with the older consoles. I mean, that's just the reality of it. It's a very small user base, I would assume, and that's that. So, sorry, but that's that.
And the days are going away where you have here's the games that your kids can play that are on discs.
Yeah,
because you're not giving them a console on the internet. I mean, I think that's going to be gone. All right, there's
always retro consoles.
Well, and that's the thing is those are we have one of those in our house. It looks like an arcade box, but it has a lot of the old retro console. It has PlayStation games, has
all legally owned
games.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. Well, I've got piles of discs for these things too.
Yes.
You only saw what we're getting rid of in our garage. But that's the thing is, these, I think that'll have a place, they'll eventually, there will be a trend for maybe having something that has all these old games on it that doesn't require the internet. Kind of like what they did with the old Pac-Mans, and, they would sell those little controllers that had the games built in.
Yeah,
I think
of course.
You're going to get to a point
where
that's a PlayStation. They're going to sell a PlayStation pre-bundled that has a bunch of these old PlayStation games that you don't have to have an internet connection for, because that was the beauty of that. You just plugged it in and you played. So we'll see. I think it's coming. All right. Do you want to talk about AI, or would you like to talk about some crime things?
Let's talk about AI. We haven't talked about AI in a while. What's going on in the old AI front?
All right. Well, there's been quite a few advancements. One thing that I saw that was interesting is, when the whole Unity thing happened, there was an announcement that this place called Series AI has raised 7.9 million for an AI game engine.
Okay.
So this is something where they're forming this studio. It sounds like it might be kind of, I don't know. There's some, here's for instance, there's people from Riot Games, Zynga, one of the lead engineers at Google, Snap's Game Studios, and someone from Congregate. So this is something that's got some big names in it, but they're raising support for the studio to have a game authoring platform that combines generative AI with an easy-to-use game editor and tool set. Kind of like a way for people to make simple games, I would assume, without having to understand all the programming. So they want a mature tool set that will allow our team to explore brand new game systems, themes, and mechanics in almost the same amount of time it would take to describe them. Now, that may be a little bit, that seems like that's a little bit a pie in the sky thinking.
I can't even get Bing to generate me the right image that I want. And these guys,
have you tried their newer generator?
They've
let
me be clear.
Newer. It's a little bit better.
It's great. It's amazing. I'm not saying that it's not. Yeah. My point is, when I tell it to do something and it does a pretty good job at doing it, there's a lot of steps between that and, hello, AI, I would like you to build me a first-person shooter game based in Somalia. I mean, you're talking, we are so far away from seeing anything practical and usable for these things.
Well, and I don't know that bringing a whole game engine is a good idea. Why not make something for Unreal Engine or for Unity?
Because they don't want to be partnered. They don't want to be tied in with these guys. That's the whole premise.
Yeah, but you're going to get so many cookie cutter, the equivalent of cookie cutter games.
Yes. Piled
out with these things because people are going to say these general descriptions, and this is going to create fairly similar concepts. It's going to have the basic mechanics of a shooter, but you're still going to have to know and understand programming to go and polish it. And this is all going to be machine generated code. Good luck going in and making a bunch of changes to this, because you'll have no idea of how the code base works.
I was going to say, you thought video game bugs were bad in a game like H1Z1. Can you imagine what the bugs would look like in some random-ass AI created game? Can you imagine the bugs? I mean, it's not, I can't even comprehend it.
Even the code generators, Amazon has one, Microsoft has one, Copilot, things like that, Code Whisperer. They still will put out wonky code sometimes. You have to understand programming. It'll give you suggestions or maybe give you the structure of something, but you still have to understand how to program to use those products. It doesn't do everything for you. It's just an assistant. This really should be the same thing, because if you're promising all you have to do is describe your game and we'll make it for you, you're going to have so many people that are just creating trash. It's going to be so buggy and so many problems, and they're going to be pumping them onto the Steam marketplace.
It's the equivalent of just buying one of these game packs like off the Epic store and just putting your name on it.
And then saying, I know how to make a game. Exactly.
It's shootergame.exe. I mean, it's going to be the exact same thing.
There's so much polish that has to happen after that to make it a playable, usable game that's unique.
Let me be clear.
That's just the first step.
I disagree with you. It's not polish. It's uniqueness. You don't want every single game to feel the movement, everything to feel exactly the same. Because
you have to go in and fix it.
It's not like you have to go in and fix it. It's just the way that you develop a game. When you're developing a game from scratch or from a very basic framework, which is where a lot of people start, you make add-ons. Yes, there are movement systems that a lot of games use, but there's those unique little twists and things that they do to them that makes it unique. And you're not going to have any of that when you tell your videogamebuilder.ai to build you a dinosaur hunting game like Ark. It's just all going to feel like the same crap.
Yes, and that's going to be that's going to be a lot of that issue. Now, here's where let me give you an example of a plugin for Unreal Engine that's been released that I think does make more sense. Sure. So there's an Unreal Engine 5.3 plugin to let you train NPCs via machine learning. This is something that makes more sense to me because training AI is something very difficult. training AI like they're showing in the example here to have people race along with you in a racing game is pretty difficult to get it to feel real, to make it feel like that's not a computer driving that car, that you're actually competing against someone else in a car. And so, they're using machine learning to train these vehicles to drive and try to figure out how to drive around the track in an efficient way so that they're competitive against a player, in a single player mode. That's sense
cool
to me.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
And so this is going to be to where you just, you put it and it can sit there and do a bunch of iterations. I think also when you start looking at plugins, maybe that will assist in taking a model and making it a movable character, like that makes sense to me because there's a lot of repetitive things that take a lot of understanding of the little details that they can get it really close, to make something at least someone can make a prototype with. But making a full game and engine, from top to bottom, however they're doing that engine, but making a full game from top to bottom, that just doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Or I think AI will have a big use in, first of all, artificial intelligence, the game, NPCs, maybe for level generation, coming up with a basic layout. They showed a lot of that in one of the recent Unreal engines of doing that forest and making it feel real. Like I can see the use of that, but when it comes to designing your game, I think that's where it will be a problem and it just won't work. Like it's got to be a tool used by someone who's a professional or knows what they're doing to help them, not something that's making it so someone who doesn't know anything about it can make a game. Because then what are you going to do with that game? It's just, it's like the cookie cutter WordPress themes that they pop out. It's like, oh, I know how to make, you don't really know how to do anything with WordPress. They're using AI to generate you a theme. What happens when there's a problem? So, one thing that's been really being an issue, though, is there's been a lot of worries about copyright in court. I know with Copilot, which helps with code, Microsoft says that they'll go to bat for you in court. I've heard some other of these where they say, hey, if there's any issues, we'll go to court and battle for you. But there's been a lot that have actually lost, especially when it comes to image generation, content generation, because they're basing it off this copyrighted content that we've been talking about it. But the U.S. Copyright Office, they're asking to hear from people starting August 30th. They were wanting to hear about people, what they think about AI and copyright. Of course, getting just general people's totally unbased opinions isn't necessarily going to be something that I think will help a lot. But I think that this is something that we've seen, all this image generation, for instance, Bing, where are they training these models at? How are they coming up with all this training? Is this something that they've done privately? Are they using Bing search results of images, which are copyrighted? Most of those are copyrighted images. Are using that to train it? That's where it comes to me is what things are you accessing to make this happen? If you can come up with one that's totally inside of its own ecosystem, kind of like what's that image company that does a lot of stock images?
Getty Images.
Getty, they're releasing one using their own images. Of course,
they own everything.
Buy the rights to that image. Yeah, They got tons and tons of images. So I can understand there off of ones that you currently own, train your model off of that. But what happens when you sell the rights to that image? Because that's what they do. You can go and you can buy the rights to an image so no one else can use it. Well, if they've already trained their AI on it, then you own the rights to it, but they can generate something that's almost identical to what you purchased using AI at that point because they have yours in the system. That's where I can see issues happening. Like, are you going to then untrain the AI on something that someone's purchased? Like, what are the issues with that? Those are the things that I think they're going to have to figure out. Like, can you get your image out of this system if you've paid for the rights to it? Because they'll go and sue you after the fact. You have purchased an image, and then Getty Images buys the rights to it, and they'll sue you. I mean, this is kind of the same concept in reverse. Getty's now selling the rights to it. Well, they would sue you for the same thing that they're doing, which is very hypocritical of them.
Yes, very hypocritical. Unfortunately, Brian, the law and the adaptation of law moves so unbelievably slow that there's likely going to be a lot of people that get really screwed until the law is able to catch up and figure out how it needs to handle this. There's going to be a lot of people that are not inherently doing something wrong or thinking that they're doing something wrong that are going to get really, really hurt. Because there's way too many unknowns. The legal system, I mean, Brian, the legal system is barely able to, it can't even handle social media. And that's not new. I mean, social medias have existed since the early 2000s. Now you're talking about AI. I mean, it's a completely different ballpark.
Well, and there's a recent court case, or I think two of them, where against OpenAI, you've got comedians and writers suing them because of their content being in the system. So Sarah Silverman, who I'm not a big fan of, Christopher Golden's a novelist, Richard Kadri is a novelist. They're all a part of this lawsuit. And ChatGPT is saying, harvesting protected by fair use, and Superlab, argues that this is something, they're going to figure that argument out. They've got to figure out who has the rights to this. If it's out on the internet, is that something they have the rights to scrape? Google does it, but there's a limited way that they're using it. So this is playing out in the courts, but do the judges even have an understanding of this? Because a lot of times we hear cases and we hear the opinions of a judge who has no clue about technology, when it comes to something at this depth. They may have a basic understanding of technology enough to give a somewhat, coherent argument or, decision. But when it comes down to this, I think this is something that none of them have a true understanding of. And the implications of their decision could be huge, as far as the impact on AI. So, I think this has been something. What is copyright? Does copyright need to be changed to accommodate?
Yes.
That's, I think, what the argument's going to end up being is,
yes,
a copyright's going to have to be manipulated in what we consider it in order for this to work. Does copyright mean that you can't? Because copyright's been really strict. Like, you can't make a copy of an image and post it on the internet. It's not the original image; it's a copy of an image. But that's that's the equivalent of what they're doing here. Was this going to loosen copyright? Because there's a lot of countries that aren't as strict on copyright as we are. Some of the ones that host the pirating websites, Sweden and Norway and places like this. Is that the direction that we have to go to keep this technology moving forward?
No, I hope not, because when you look at this stuff, it's not just, right now we're just talking about graphics and images and things like that. This is a larger conversation about intellectual property, which is a very important thing, and it's what
software. I mean, there's all kinds of things,
physical products, even. Brian. I mean, you have you have IP over products. I think I've used this example on the show before. There's a company here in North Carolina called Charlotte Pipe. Brian, in your new house or the house you're living in right now, you probably have a piece of PVC pipe that says Charlotte Pipe on it, and they're the largest PVC manufacturer in the country. China, about 10 years ago, started importing Charlotte pipe. They were just ripping this stuff off in China, literally slapping their name all over it, watermarking it, and then importing it to the United States.
They don't do anything to stop it.
There's no concern. So no, I mean, we don't want to be like that. I mean, because then you're in a really tough situation business wise. So, but in these circumstances, and when you're looking at AI specifically, and in this case, images and generation of those or whatnot, the law will probably have to adapt at least a little bit to meet the needs of these services. No question about it.
But even the fact now that they've ruled that something created with AI can't be copyrighted, that's going to have to be figured out. Because if you're creating all these tools to help game developers create games using AI, okay, well, will you be able to even copyright your game at that point?
No,
and say that. So anyone can, if they're going to have to all be open sourced games that anybody can use and copy, and that's creating a mess in itself.
No,
how are
would
you
it
selling
be
a
great?
product making something the person can't even sell?
What'll be? Well, they can sell it. They can sell it
Well,
for
they can sell it,
$20.
but I can then take it.
No, they sell it for $20. Then you go to the big AI machine and go build me the same game, and then you sell it for $10. And then I come in and sell it for $5.
Yeah.
And then somebody else comes in and gives it away for free. That's what will happen.
And then you got a million trash games, that do nothing.
All do the same thing. Some are $50, some are free. It's all the same junk. I mean, that's exactly the same thing with stealing intellectual property and producing an inferior version of the product. The same thing happened with the steel industry and everything else. It's a serious issue.
This is something that Sweeney on Epic Games Store, he says he's open to devs using generative AI.
Sure.
He says we shouldn't assume all generative AI is terrible or infringing, but the problem is if you cannot copyright it, then how can they put something on their store that they then say, you're not legally allowed to pirate this or do whatever with it?
Well, and I think
that's going to be what they need to figure out is how can they put something on their store that is not copyrighted and can't legally be copyrighted.
I think it all comes down to how much of it and what exactly you're doing with it. For example, I mean, it was proved IBM with their original what is it that they had copywritten? The code for their
MS-DOS.
For MS-DOS.
Well, for
or not for MS-DOS, but for their bootloader. Yes, it was their bootloader that they had. They had the physical code copywritten, but they couldn't copyright what it did. They could copyright the code.
So then they came out with a clone, the x86 or x86 clone, right?
That's where
then all of a sudden
Compaq showed up and they completely reverse engineered the IBM bootloader with never touching the chip, never looking at the code, just followed the prompts and made something that did the same thing. IBM tried suing the living hell out of Compaq and they lost. Because they did not infringe on their copyright, which was, in that case, the physical code. Not the actions, but the physical lines of code is what IBM had the copyright over. And they lost.
Well,
And then you had a Megatrends come through, and then Megatrends literally reverse engineered it and then gave it away to everybody and said, hey, if you want an IBM compatible bootloader, we'll sell it to you. That's literally how Megatrends started. That's what they did. So we've seen things like this happen in the past. Now, we've not had the AI component of it, of course, but you've seen this in the technology field, in the computer field happen. You can't copyright this. You can't copyright all this stuff. It's just, you can't copyright shooting Nazi zombies. Call of Duty can't copyright that. They copyright the name. They might be able to copyright some of the minute elements, but you can't copyright the idea.
They might patent some concept or some game mechanic or something, but they can't get everything.
But it's got to be a very specific mechanic. You can't go walking through a door and shooting somebody. That's not a patentable or copyrightable thing. It's got to be very minute detail. That's why when you dig into patents and look at intellectual property, you see the smallest little things are what are actually copywritten and patented, because you can't patent everything. It just doesn't work like that.
Well, and that's the thing is that I think this is going to stress that whole legal system until they settle this and probably make some compromises in the end. Because,
let's take a break for 15 years and come back, because I think that'll be about the time we'll be looking at. I'll be 40. I'll be close to 40 years old.
Well, and that's the thing is, for instance, that one guy who's suing OpenAI, he's suing him for hundreds of thousands of novels. So he's claiming copyright infringement on hundreds of thousands of novels because of all the things that they've been training on. So, really.
But now but that is an issue. No, that I think is an issue. If you're using your AI and using a learning model of actually copywritten content, that is an issue to me. That's not.
It is. But how are you going to train if you're trying to come up with something that can write like that? You need to train it on real material. Well, this is where I think they're going to have to come up with a way for people to write things and submit it to the training engine and create a marketplace based on that, where people aren't selling their work. Kind of like Fiverr, or something that's more enhanced than Fiverr, but something to where you can go and create work that then you can sell to this AI company the rights to it so they can use it to train their models. And make it to where it's something reasonable to where they feel like they're making some money, but have, say, here's ways that you can easily help train this and maybe guardrails so they're not just writing crazy stuff. But, come up with a marketplace for that. Make it profitable so that people can still make money and don't just, because they're just stealing tons of authors' content and then creating content to compete against those.
The solution to this is licensing. I mean, we already know that. I mean, we have a practical way of handling this. If you want your AI to learn off of a bunch of literature, you need to pay to license that literature. I mean, that's what it is. But that requires money and requires going through a process to do it, which these companies don't want to do because it's the AI industry right now. And I'm working on a little side project with a couple of friends dealing with some AI stuff. It's all about getting to market. Because there's 1,000 new AI, and not all of it's actually AI, but 1,000 new AI products showing up every single day.
Yep.
So
the problem is you can't really train off of 10 items. You need hundreds and hundreds to thousands of thousands, or as many items as you can get to really get a good base. And that's the problem this comes down to. How are they going to pay all these people something that is reasonable to help train these models? They have to figure out a way that they're going to make money first to be able to then pay out. So I think it's the cart before the horse kind of an issue of they need to pay these people to train, but they need to figure out how to make money off of the AI stuff first. If they're already making the money and then pay people afterwards, great. But that's kind of too late.
Yeah.
So.
All right, Brian, where can people find you online?
Well, if you want to find me on X, you can get at Boise Computer, or you can go to at Brian Aldridge on Gab, Getter, or Truth Social. If you want to go check out my blog, biteoftech.com, or, of course, if you go to our website, infectionpodcast.com, go to the upper right-hand side, join our server on Discord, because that's a good way for you to get a hold of Nick or I. Maybe you want to play on one of our 11 ARC servers, or if you want to submit some topics to our show news channel, just put some links in there, and we'll review that before the live show starts. If you want to watch that live show, you can do that on Twitch or YouTube, or watch the recording after the fact on Rumble. If you want to listen to the podcast, you can do that after we finish our recording on the lower right-hand side. Lots of different platforms, devices, ways to listen, and those are all free. If you're going to be listening, though, that means we've got the particular episode show notes all uploaded to the website and ready to go. Just click on that particular episode. There's an audio-video player built into that page, and then, of course, links for everything that we discussed throughout the show. Maybe there's a video that you wanted to see. We showed one earlier in the show. If you're listening, you can go jump in there and check it out for yourself, or maybe go in a little bit deeper, because we get a lot of material that we talk a little bit about, but there's a lot more content there for you to check out. If you want to support us, you can do it through the support menu option up top, or you can go to infectionpodcast.com/support.
Yes, you can. Brian, as always, greatly appreciated, my friend. We'll be back. Maybe next week, maybe not. We're still working out some scheduling details on that. So nevertheless, of course, you can always check out our Discord server. We'll keep you up to date with all of that. Brian, as always, greatly appreciated. We'll see you next time.
See you then.
Alrighty, folks, that's going to do it. If you want to check out my day gig, you can visit nickcraig.com or check out the Wilmington's Morning News podcast. If you missed any portion of this show, however, you can find all of that, links to various videos and topics on our website. It's infectionpodcast.com. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.